Hi everyone, I'm Casey, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Tattooed Chef, which recently went public via SPAC with foreign merger. The ticker symbol is TTCF. I'm going to briefly go over what the company is, what they do, and why I personally think it might be a good investment long term. Might be choppy in the weeks to come or even months to come with the stock price, but I do think this is a good opportunity long term, and let's dive into why. So briefly diving into what the company is, Tattooed Chef is a health foods company. They make all different types of frozen food meals that are, like cauliflower rice, cauliflower burgers, all these different type of healthy vegan or vegetarian food options that are kind of like a plant-based meat alternative. They don't necessarily make a full plant-based meat like Beyond Meat does or Impossible Foods does, but they are basically trying to go that similar route with, like I mentioned, cauliflower patties, cauliflower everything, as I probably have already shown some photos of their meals. That's kind of the route they're taking. Now, why is this company worth mentioning or making a video on, and why do I think it's a really solid investment long term? Well, this health foods industry has been growing like crazy, and a lot of the screenshots I'm going to be showing are actually from the investor presentation that was done for this special acquisition company merger with the company called Form Merger that made the company go public via SPAC. So health and wellness has been growing like crazy. I'm sure I'll put up some statistics and some numbers, but if you just think about like the kale craze over the last several years, the vegan, the vegetarian, the organic, basically the whole health and wellness industry, specifically in foods, has been growing like crazy, and I don't see any reason why it would stop soon. Tattooed Chef, why I think it's a great company to get into, is because previously they were doing a lot of private label stuff with companies. And what that means is, like, if you're familiar with Costco, like their Kirkland brand, that's a private label, or like Safeway, Albertsons, Vons, they're like Select Foods, that's a private label. And so Tattooed Chef was previously making all these meals that I showed earlier, but under the private label brand for these companies. And what's really notable is this last year, or most of 2020, they've surpassed for the first time the branded sales of Tattooed Chef brand of the private label. So that's really, really huge, because people are starting to recognize the brand, get association with it, and ultimately that's going to help the company grow a ton versus private label. So diving into the financials, I'm going to basically kind of read off of some of these screenshots that I'm going to put up. What is really, really compelling to me, because I personally am not like a huge fan of these type of foods or anything like that, but I see the growth potential because their net sales compounded annually growth rate was 61.7%. From 2019 to 21 projected. If you compare that with some of the other companies that are growing like crazy, like specifically Beyond Meat, which stock price has just been going through the moon the last couple of years, that's 58.6%. So it's growing almost the same, actually a little better than Beyond Meat, and I think the stock price is going to reflect that over the next several years. Important to note, which is even better and more important financial, is the adjusted EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Essentially, it's profit before tax. That's the easiest way to think about it. Their growth rate is 110%, which is crazy. And you compare that to Beyond Meat, which is also really, really high, and that's why their stock price has been going high. It's 81%. So I think also if you look at like Freshpet, for instance, which is third in line at 50% or 49.5, their stock price has gone up a crazy amount too, like 1,000% in the last several years. So I think Tattooed Chef, if they can continue this growth rate, which I don't see why they wouldn't, it's going to be huge for the stock price, in my opinion. The reason why some people would, contradict this growth rate being sustainable is they were recently put into Whole Foods and Costco, and like their branded products, and that's why they've had so much growth. However, the reason why I think the growth is going to continue is because these products were already in major stores, but just as a private label, and they weren't really growing. And once they started putting them into these stores branded as Tattooed Chef, it actually started gaining a lot of traction, as the facts and data show. And so that's why I think it's going to be really, really likely that the growth rate continues. So again, another financial stat I wanted to throw up is their adjusted EBITDA margin for 2021 projected next year. Essentially what that means is the profit before taxes, that is the percentage of their total sales. So they're at 14%, Beyond Meat is at 11%, and I know I keep comparing this a lot to Beyond Meat, but I'm sure I've showed the graph at this point, maybe a few times even, of Beyond Meat. It's just been, their stock price has been going up like crazy, and I know a lot of people who are naysayers to Tattooed Chef might counter and say, well, Beyond Meat has a lot more growth potential in their opinion because, you know, it's a plant-based meat and it could go into a lot more of uses than Tattooed Chef can. However, I still think the growth potential of Tattooed Chef is really, really large because frozen foods, like, if I can find some data, I'll put it up on the screen, of like frozen foods, especially healthy frozen foods, have been growing a lot over the last several years. If anyone's familiar with like Trader Joe's, for instance, their frozen foods have become increasingly popular over the last several years. And I think Tattooed Chef is going to be a brand that's going to do that too. So the last major thing I wanted to touch on from their investor presentation that I think is super relevant is their valuation, because that's what we as investors care about, right? So their revenue multiple for what they're valuing the company at, and I think this was probably, I'm not sure exactly the stock price, I'm sure you can look it up, that this investor presentation was based off of, but it was probably, you know, $19, $20 or so, and now it's gone up a little bit to like 24. So it, according to the screenshot at the time, it was 2.2 times of a revenue multiple, which basically means the price of the stock was trading at 2.2 times, or the market cap, which of course takes into consideration the stock price, was trading at 2.2 times what their revenue was. If you compare that to Beyond Meat, it's 12.2. Again, if you look at, on the valuation side of things, the next screenshot of the adjusted EBITDA multiple, basically the profit multiple, Tattooed Chef is definitely up there at 16 times. But still, that's not too much higher than conventional foods at, like, you know, anywhere from 11 to 13 or 14 on the high end. But you compare that to Beyond Meat at 110 times, or Vital Farms, which is 120 times, or Fresh Pet 63 times. So those are very, very highly valued when you compare them to Tattooed Chef or even their respective earnings. And another thing that is really, really important in my opinion is that Tattooed Chef is profitable. Beyond Meat is still not profitable, yet its stock price has gone up so much. You look at this next screenshot, which I really, really like, which is looking at the benchmarking comparison between Tattooed Chef at IPO versus other similar companies. So I'll talk a little bit about Annie's in a bit, but before I move on, I wanted to talk about Beyond Meat, where at the time of their IPO, Beyond Meat's 7-quarter forward net sales projection was $318 million. Tattooed Chef is $222 million. So percentage-wise, significantly lower, but not that much, especially because they're already profitable. Again, you know, Fresh Pet lower than that, and their stock price has gone up crazy. Annie's a little lower than that. And the reason why I think this stock is so good and important to get into is because if they continue to grow at a similar rate, or even a little less, but still grow at such a high percentage, it's very, very likely that they could get acquired too. So Annie's, for instance, they were acquired by General Mills years ago, and they were acquired for $820 million. And Annie's IPO'd at around 110 million, or something like that, somewhere in the 100 millions. And so somewhere around 7 to 8 times gain if you were an early investor in Annie's around the IPO. And that's something that I could very, very easily see with Tattooed Chef. I could easily see it becoming, you know, close to $1 billion and getting acquired before that. And even if it doesn't, I think it's still just a great stock to own for a while. So just a little bit of clarification on what I was just talking about before I wrap this up was that at the time of the IPO of Beyond Meat, they were losing $19 million at their IPO, where you consider that, or you compare that with Tattooed Chef, who is earning $12 million at the time of their IPO. In terms of net sales, Tattooed Chef is at $101 million at the time of their IPO, and Beyond Meat was only at $88 million. So this company is definitely no joke. To kind of tie this all together and wrap up the video, the numbers are there. This isn't a company like I've done a video before on Fisker or like Nikola or some of these other companies that went public via SPAC. This is actually a profitable, which is huge, a profitable company. They have a lot of sales. They're real. It's not just a business plan or a business model like a Nikola or Fisker is, where they have the plans and it's probably going to happen and everything. But it's that in the infant stage. This company is in the high growth stage. This is actually very similar to what like getting into a normal IPO would be, but they went public via SPAC for all of the ease that they offer. So to tie it all together, as I mentioned, it's growing really fast. It's in the health and wellness foods industry that's also growing really fast. It's in the frozen food segment of that, which is growing really fast. It's becoming more branded, right? It's not private label anymore, which is helping contribute to the growth. And I really think in a year or two, it's going to be as popular and people are going to know it as well as Beyond Meat. And even not, there's going to still be a lot of growth because I really believe in this industry and I think it's a great company. Now, one of the things I wanted to say in closing is that this stock has ran up a lot. I'm sure I've showed its graph, but if not, I'll put it up right now. It's went up something like 80%, I think, in the last year. So it's, or 135%. In the last 3 months, it's gone up 63%. I think there's nothing to be said that the stock couldn't go down another 5, 10, 15% or so if you bought it now. Like in the last month, for instance, it's went down 13% from its previous high, which the high was really because of hype. And the stock is still considered a hype stock in my opinion. However, I think it's still a great time to get into it. Kind of keep your eye on it. I think it going down 13% in the last month, as I said, is a decent time to get in on it. It could keep going down, but it seems that it's formed kind of a resistance point around like $20 or so. Its previous low was $19.72. Then before that, it was $22. And right now it's $23.80. So it's probably going to bounce off this other resistance that it'll form sometime soon, and essentially is making lower lows, which means it's on the ascent. So in closing, that was kind of all the things I wanted to mention. I don't want this video to be way too long, so I'll kind of wrap it up there. Please comment down below if you have anything at all. If you don't believe in the company, let me know. I'd love to learn more. I'm definitely not closed-minded when it comes to interacting with all of you. I actually love it. Like the video if you liked it, and let me know what you all think. As I mentioned, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.